Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Faith is not a set of beliefs. It is your problems. It is your sickness. It is your battles, your money, your mountain to move. If you say the word faith, it definitely has a lot of meaning to a lot of different people and different meanings. Some people say they live in it. Some people say they long for it. Some people say they have tons of it. Some people say that they have never experienced it, and maybe some have had it for a period of time in their life, and then some people, they've lost it. Some will say their faith is strong. Others will say their faith is weak, and still others say that they have no faith at all. Today, as we begin this journey over the next 4 weeks about faith, I would say this morning that every single person alive exhibits some sort of faith every day. Some sort of faith every day. Now, I understand that maybe, sitting here thinking of that statement, you're thinking, I don't know about that, but just, and some of this may be kind of funny, but it's real. You wake up in the morning having faith that the sun will come up. You wake up every morning to go to the bathroom to take your shower having faith that the light switch is going to turn your light on. Some of you have faith that your hair dryer will come on or your curling iron will come on. Some of you have faith that your car is going to start to get you to a job that you have faith that you will have when you get there. And then you will have faith that that car is going to start when your job is over to get you home, to do the rest of your evening, going to sleep having faith that in the morning the sun will come up again. Everyone lives in some kind of faith. We exhibit it every single day. Everyone has some level. Faith is also expressed in the spiritual realm. And each of us, regardless of our backgrounds or education or our social status or our talents, listen, we can express faith. Now, the difference between faith that we exercise in our daily routine and our religious faith is just simply the object of that faith. It's the object of that faith. Now, I could sit here and tell you, and would love to tell you that Christianity is the only religion that has faith, but we know that not to be true. Because people that follow all kinds of religions in this world have a faith in whatever that might be. And can I be really honest and frank and just really bold with you? There are some religions where people show more faith than Christianity. So much faith that they're willing to physically give their life for what they believe in. It's faith. One thing throughout this journey over the next few weeks is I hope that our faith is stretched. I hope it's identified. I hope that for every single one of us, after this 4-week journey is over with, we've come to this place to where we're not satisfied where our faith is. That we realize that God desires more from me in this area of faith. Because faith can be so much. We get it so out of whack and so out of line. And sometimes today people's faith, they put faith in money. There's so much faith placed in money today. You got to make more. We got to have more so we can do this. And it's an election year. So many people's faith are placed in a man or a woman to fix our mess. I mean, seriously, or a group of people that it's going to fix this problem, or it's going to, and our faith is placed in the wrong things. But faith in God, how is that lived out? Honestly, physical faith, spiritual faith, what is it? Have you ever just sit down to think, what is faith? I know we hear different kinds of definitions and all this stuff, and we're gonna go to the biblical definition here in a little bit, but have you ever just sit back, especially in those times where maybe your faith is rocked or it feels non-existent, and you're just like, what is this thing called faith anyways? What is it? What is it to me? How is it supposed to feel? What is it supposed to be? To understand what faith is, first we must get past what certain misconceptions there are about faith. So a few things that faith is not. First, faith is not the ability to manipulate God. Faith is not the ability to manipulate God. This is the approach of the health and wealth prosperity gospel, just saying. Where everything is fine and you can manipulate God. And this approach only sees faith as having one aim, one fruit, a life of ease and a life of blessing. If I do this, then God will do this for me, right? I mean, I'm smack dab, and if you look at my fingers, you would tell what season it is. Because they are eat up, cut up, ripped up, and man, but I love it. I love the fish. I love the fish in the springtime, and lipping white bass and crappie and walleye, and just rips your fingers to shreds. And mine are just torn up, and it's hard. I can remember there were times in my life when I would go fishing. This is no joke, swear, promise you, this is the truth. Where I would think that if I did something good, that God would let me catch my limit. Now, some of you are laughing, but it may not be fishing. There's something you say, well, if I just do this, then God's going to bless me with this. Oh, if I would just pray every day, then God's going to give me this. And it's like we get this faith thing becomes how we manipulate God into giving us or providing for us exactly what we want or what we think we need. Second, faith is not a set of beliefs. Faith is not a set of beliefs. It's not, set on some right doctrine. Paul says in 2 Timothy 1:12, he says, I know whom I have believed. If your beliefs are not founded on the right person, it doesn't matter what else you believe. It's not beliefs. Beliefs become religion, not relationship. Third, the faith is not a blind leap into the dark. Faith is not a blind leap into the dark. To many unbelievers, faith is this antithesis of science. To these saying you just have to have faith is the same as saying I just have to act contrary to everything that you know and trust that it will work out for the best. It's like, this blind, bleeding the blind kind of a thing. We just go blindly into this thing called life, and we put no thought into God's direction or into God's will or into God's plan, and it's not just taking that blind leap. And finally, faith is not simply devotion to whatever God one happens to follow. True faith, biblical faith that we're going to talk about here in a minute, is just not simply following or devoting your life to whatever God. Because when we start talking about whatever gods, that can be anything. Let's go back to the money. Let's go back to your cars. Let's go back to your houses. Let's go back to your social status. Let's go back to government. Let's go back to politics. Even church. Some people put their faith in church. Some people put their faith in pastors. I can promise you put your faith in me, complete faith. Now, you can trust me. If I'm put up here, how many times have we seen so many times people put the pastor or the leadership in a church way up here, and then they fall. And then what happens? They leave church. And to me, if that's what happens, then your faith wasn't in God. It wasn't a person or it wasn't a building. And that's not what this whole thing about church is designed to be. That's not what faith is designed to be. People will let you down. Buildings will let you down. Churches will let you down. Governments will let you down. A dollar will let you down. Faith. Some people say, we talk about whatever God one follows, he's a person of deep faith. And they might say that about, a follower of Muhammad or a follower of Islam and even Christianity. But unfortunately, none of these is true faith. You say, wait a minute, Pastor Ron, you just said Christianity. That's exactly what I said. Because some people begin to follow and put their faith in the religion and not the relationship. So the definition of faith, we'll go to Hebrews chapter 11. We're going to look at the first 3 verses, at least at this point in time. We're going to dive into some of the rest of it here in just a little bit. But it says this, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which were visible. True faith is confident obedience to God's word in spite of circumstances or consequences. I want to look at this in a twofold kind of a matter here just for a second, if you would. Faith is described in this two ways. It is the substance of things hoped for, okay, and the evidence of things not seen. The word translated for substance in the Greek means to stand under or to support. To stand under or support. So faith is the foundation that gives the believer the confidence to stand. And this verse could actually be translated, faith is the confidence of things hoped for. Okay, the confidence of things hoped for. There's an illustration of this in the life of a missionary by the name of Hudson Taylor. When he first went to China, he was sailing on this ship, this vessel. And they were sailing very close to the shore of Cannibal Islands, and the ship was caught in a calm. There was no wind. And it was slowly drifting towards the shore. And they say they could see the cannibals actually on the coastline, almost like they were excited about the feast that was about to step on their land. So the captain came to Mr. Taylor because he knew he was a man of God, and he sought him to pray for the help of God. "I will," said Taylor, "provided that you set your sails to catch the breeze." The captain declined to make himself a laughingstock by unfurling the sails in a dead calm. And Taylor said, "I will not undertake to pray for the vessel unless you will prepare the sails." And it was done. And while engaged in prayer, there was a knock at the door of his stateroom. "Who is there?" The captain's voice responded and said, "Are you still praying for wind?" Mr. Taylor said, "Yes." "Well," said the captain, "you better stop praying, for we have more wind than we can manage." It's faith. It's this confidence in the things that we hope for. Second, word describing what faith is translated evidence, and it means conviction. It means conviction. This inward conviction enables the believer to believe things not yet seen, that God will do what he has promised. See, it's one thing to hope, but it's another thing to believe. There's another story that I'll use here, tell you just real quick, of a captain of a ship. The story is told by this captain of the ship in which George Mueller of Bristol was traveling. Mueller was a man who had several children's homes and depended on God alone to provide for them. By the way, these are true stories. During his lifetime, he had received more than £1 million from God without advertising to help take care of these children. Every penny came as an answer to his prayer. So he had George Mueller of Bristol aboard, and said the captain, and I had been on the bridge for 24 hours and had never left it. And George Mueller came to me and said, "Captain, I have come to tell you that you must be in Quebec on Saturday afternoon." "It is impossible," I said. "Then very well. If your ship cannot take me, God will find some other way. I have never broken an engagement in 57 years. Let us go down into the chart room and pray." I looked at that man of God and thought to myself, what a lunatic. I've never heard of such a thing as this. "Mr. Mueller," I said, "do you know how dense this fog is?" "No," he replied, "my eye is not on the density of the fog, but on the living God who controls every circumstance of my life." That's good. He knelt down and he prayed one of the simplest prayers, and when he had finished, I was going to pray, but he put his hand on my shoulder and told me not to pray, "as you do not believe that he will answer. And as I believe he has. There is no need whatever for you to pray about it." I looked at him, and George Mueller said, "Captain, I have known the Lord for 57 years, and there has never been a single day when I have failed to get an audience with the king. Get up, Captain, and open the door, and you will find the dense fog gone." So I got up, opened the door, and indeed, the fog was gone. And Mr. Mueller made it to Quebec on that Saturday afternoon. Now, you hear stories like that, and you're like, oh, that is just amazing. That is just incredible. And, wow. Those are the stories that just make you go, oh, but reality? Maybe that's not you. Maybe you've not had the wind start blowing when you've prayed for the wind to start blowing. Or the fog to go away when you've prayed for the fog to go away. See, it's easy to live in the faith in the middle of somebody else's faith. It's easy to grab a hold of their stories and celebrate with them about those. It's easy to tell and even listen to the stories of extraordinary faith, but in your situation, my life, those circumstances are different. And you know what? I would agree with you very simply because it is your life. It is your problems. It is your sickness. It is your battles, your money, your mountain to move. That brings this whole concept and this whole thing, to a greater sense of reality. Because maybe that hasn't happened to you. So let's go back to Hebrews chapter 11. Substance of things hoped for. Once again, just being honest, hoping for something is one thing, isn't it? Can we all say that we've hoped for certain things to happen in our life? We've hoped for this to happen. We've hoped for this to get better. We've hoped for this relationship to be restored. We've hoped for this financial struggle to go away. We've hoped for this child to go a different direction. We've hoped for all of these different things. It's one thing to hope for something. I mean, it seems like it's easy that every single one of us, somewhere inside, we could find this place where we can hope for something. We hope for God to show up and do something amazing in the middle of my storm or to move this mountain in my life. Hoping is one thing, but believing that it will happen. Trusting God so much, that's different. Because you're trusting a God that you cannot physically see. A God that this pastor talks about every single week. Having that conviction in your heart so strong that your only response is to just simply trust that God will show up.
Come on, let's put our hands together this morning.
We hope you are enjoying this week's message. CPC is a viewer-supported ministry. Online, we can be found at cpcava.org. There, we have multiple resources to connect you with our church, as well as a safe and secure way to support this program. Thank you for your contribution.
God will show up, and He will do what He thinks is best. Isn't that hard sometimes? You know why it's hard? Because just like the captain looked at how dense the fog was, instead of the one who could remove it. It's easy to get caught up in our humanistic way of thinking and living and see the mountain as being bigger than the God who allowed it to be there and the God that can move it just like that. It's those moments that we see someone else's mountain moved. And ours is just still right in front of us, and we're like, God, man, I love you, and I believe in you, and I followed you, and I do all these things. My mountain's not moving. Why have I prayed for this person to get well, and they didn't get well, but this person over here did? Those are faith moments. Those are moments that honestly make us look down inside of our lives and make us, maybe we check ourselves, maybe we even check God, but that's just the reality. Hoping is one thing, believing is something totally different. By the way, throughout this series in the next few weeks, we're going to look at what it means, to our faith and how to deal with faith when God does not show up the way that we want. Because that's a tough place, is it not? We're going to look at that. We're going to look at what it means to have faith in the middle of a storm. Because that's where your faith is really tested. I shared with our team this morning, it's easy to have faith when everything's going good, right? I mean, when everything is perfect, man, it is easy to stand up and smile. I got faith. Or, you'll tell somebody else, have faith, brother. But when it's you, or when it's me, even me, it's hard. It's hard even as your pastor when things are going on in my own life and mountains are in my life and struggles are in my life every single week to stand up here and say, have faith. Because on the inside sometimes my faith is rocked. That's reality. But you know what? Number one, God understands it. Number two, we can learn and grow from that. And honestly, to me, it's in those moments that we'll talk about in the next couple of weeks, that's where our faith is strengthened the most. That's where it becomes strong. It's just like Adam when he's in the gym and he's working out. Those muscles didn't get big because he said, God, make my muscles big. He has to work at it. And the more that he works at it, the bigger his muscles get and the stronger that he gets. It's the same thing with our faith. It's just like, you've heard the old cliche, don't pray for patience. How do you learn patience? You're giving the opportunity to show patience. It's the same thing with faith. God, strengthen my faith. Really? Because that's, even though it's something that we should all pray, it's something that, in all honesty, it's tough to go through. Why? Because sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it causes us to do more than what we've done before. It's going to take some effort. It's going to take, some things and some victories in our life. And you know what? There's something totally different about that kind of faith. It is not ordinary. Remember last week what I said? The ordinary will never produce the extraordinary. You want to be different. You want your life to be different. You want things in your life to be different. You want your relationships to be different. You want your relationship with God to be different. You want your finances to be different. Whatever it's, then do something different. Do something different, because if what you have right now is not working, then do something different. If the measure of faith right now that you have or you feel that you have just isn't where it needs to be, then do something different. I go back to Peter and that whole, just that moment. And I've thought about this so much in my life. He walked on water for a moment because of faith. A momentary glimpse of just complete faith in Jesus. You say, well, he fell. Yeah, he fell. You know why he fell? Because he got his eyes off of Jesus. The storm became bigger than Jesus. But he still walked on water. Can you imagine? You know what everybody goes back to? Everybody goes back to the fact that Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And yes, as bad as that is and as awful as that is, and yes, that did happen, I go back to when he walked on water. That day when he preached and 3,000 people were saved, and the very first message of the gospel that was ever preached, that's what I go back to. I go back to the fact that this man had the courage and the faith to stand up and speak about Jesus because Jesus let him walk on water. That is amazing to me. Something extraordinary. This is something else. All the other disciples in the boat, if it would have been, seriously, couldn't any of them have gotten out of that boat? I think they probably could. Peter was gutsy enough just for a minute. He had the faith just for a minute to do something extraordinary, and something extraordinary happened in his life. And man, when things like that, when that happens, you change. Things around you change. And just like Peter, what we see, it doesn't make you perfect. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes. But it does mean that you grow from that, and that becomes a part of who you are and a part of your life. The people around you will change. The extraordinary happens, and God shows off. And that's radical faith. And that's the kind of faith that God is looking for. And my prayer over the next few weeks that we begin a journey for, because I don't care where our faith is, I really don't. It should be more. Just like our relationship with God. If we come in here and say, well, my relationship with God is at this level, then, my desire should be for it to come up to this level. My relationship with my spouse is good today, but it should be better tomorrow. That's just, that's something inside of me. And so our faith should be the same way. Let me finish reading the Hall of Fame chapter 2. I don't have it on the screen because it's a lot of scripture. But we talk about faith. The one thing that really, to me, as some of these people that we'll read about here in just a second, at least Peter got to see Jesus. At least the disciples that gave their life, they walked with him and they talked with him. It wasn't just, some story. These people in the Old Testament, now, yeah, they heard a voice, maybe saw a burning bush, but he wasn't there like Jesus was there. But yet when we talk about faith, and the Bible gives you examples of great faith, it was of the men and women that lived their life obedient to God, but truly and physically never seeing God. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain. By faith, he was commended righteous when God spoke well of his offering. And by faith, Abel still speaks today, even though he is dead. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. Can you imagine Noah? Let's talk about faith. God says build an ark. And I'm not talking just a little rowboat. I'm talking of, that's faith. That's faith. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place that he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land, like a stranger in a foreign country, and he lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is of God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was unable to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made this promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. All of these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things they promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have been given the opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Verse 17 in chapter 11 says, by faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. Now, boy, there's one for you. By faith, God said, give me your boy. And Abraham said, okay. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead. And so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshiped as he leaned on top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He He chose to be mistreated along with people of God rather to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christians of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover and the application of blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea on dry land. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed. And what more shall I say? The writer says, I don't have time to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms and ministered justice and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. They were all commended for their faith. I want to tell you one more story this morning before we close. There was a 3-year-old who felt very secure in his daddy's arms as his dad stood in the middle of a pool. But dad, for fun, began wading slowly towards the deep end, gently chanting deeper and deeper and deeper. And as the water rose higher and higher on the child, the lad's face registered increasing degrees of panic. And he held all the more tightly to his father, who, of course, could easily touch the bottom. Had the little boy been able to analyze this situation, he'd have realized that there was no reason for increased anxiety. The water's depth in any part of the pool was over his head, even the shallowest. Had he not been held up, he would have drowned. His safety anywhere in that pool depended on his dad. At various points in our lives, we will get to that place where all we have is faith. And honestly, I have to believe that that's exactly where God wants us to be. It's a hard place to be, because when we're at that place, there's usually something pretty bad that's happened to get us there. But we get to that place to recognize and to realize that God's in control. And however deep the water in the pool may be, He can touch. He can touch. He can handle it. So let me close with this. This is what Jesus said about faith. Y'all got a little bag when you came in with this little tan speck in it. And by now, most of you have probably figured out that it's a mustard seed. Jesus said this in Matthew 17, verse 20. He says, "Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible to you." Now, honestly, when we look at that, you're like, no way. But you know what I think? This is just me. This is just an illustration to me that Jesus had a feeling that we would just make this too hard. And basically what he's saying is it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. No matter what storm, no matter what battle, no matter what you're facing, no matter the struggle, no matter the situation, just this much. Just this much. And he goes on to say, with just this much, nothing's impossible. Now, once again, over the next couple of weeks, I want to talk to you about those moments when God's will is different than our will, And it will really stretch our faith. But the Bible says, man, don't believe it in your heart one way and speak it out of your mouth another way. Don't be like the ship that's rocking back and forth, going to and fro. Stand on it. Believe on it. It don't take much. That no matter what you're going through, it's enough. Just this much is enough.